Joe Biden's handlers have decided to dose him up, wheel him out, and allow him to give his final presidential address. And thank goodness this is the last time we'll have to hear from him, hopefully forever, okay? Because it goes about as good as you'd expect for a man who is aged like milk. So before we get to these clips, don't forget to like and comment on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
This will be my final address to you from the American people from the Oval Office, from this desk as president. And I've been thinking a lot about who we are and maybe more importantly, who we should be. Together, we've launched a new era of American possibilities, one of the greatest modernizations of infrastructure in our entire history, from new roads, bridges, clean water, affordable high-speed internet for every American, and finally, doing something to protect our children and our families by passing the most significant gun safety law in 30 years and bringing violent crime to a 50-year low. I want to warn the country of some things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. And the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America. You know, his farewell address, President Eisenhower spoke of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. He warned us then about, and I quote, the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power, end of quote. 6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit.
So Joe Biden, of course, is trying to highlight the many accomplishments of his administration, as well as give us a warning about the future under Donald Trump, okay? But you'll notice the first thing he mentions is, oh yeah, he passed that bipartisan infrastructure bill. And remember that huge debacle where they spent $7.5 billion to build 8 EV stations? Well, don't worry, that has now been updated, and they have now officially built 51 EV stations in 15 states. So good job. That sounds a heck of a lot better than 8, but still not worth $7.5 billion, okay? But this is exactly the type of thing that Joe Biden did. Spent a whole bunch of your tax dollars for not much return. And then, of course, he talks about how violent crime has plummeted under his administration. Yeah, remember how the FBI had to go back and revise those numbers, right? Initially, they said, oh, we've had this drop in 1.7% of violent crime, but then they had to adjust that and say that, oh, actually, there was a rise of 4.5% of violent crime during that same time period. So yeah, sorry, Joe Biden, it's not working out for you the way you wanted to. And by the way, then he starts to worry about oligarchs in the country. Oh, the country's being taken over and run by powerful, rich people. So here's a picture of Joe Biden giving the Presidential Medal of Freedom Award to George Soros via his son, Alex Soros, right? So here's this picture just to look at for no particular reason, because there's no way that George Soros has been funding leftist politicians, leftist prosecutors, leftist DAs all across this country to, of course, cause mass chaos, right? He's the whole person behind the open borders push. He's the person behind no cash bail, right? He's the person behind allowing criminals to run rampant in this country, okay? But oh, it's the Elon Musks and Donald Trumps we have to worry about in this world. It's not the George Soroses, who, by the way, contributed to prosecutors who actually went after Donald Trump, right? But never mind any of that. What we really want to see is Scott Jennings completely demolish a CNN pundit over this exact same topic.
Ashley, did anything in the speech surprise you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the part that really stood out to me is the president's focus on mis and disinformation. That was the main focus for Donald Trump, was to undermine truth. And then what we saw on the entire campaign trail was lie after lie after lie. I mean, the campaign was basically rooted in lies about what he's accomplished, what he's planning to do, all of these. And so the fact that the president focused and warned us about the need to focus on this issue of mis and disinformation, social media platforms not fact-checking, media not fact-checking, it leads us, it really raises this question of what's next for us. How will we know what the truth is?
Scott?
Has Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or Karine Jean-Pierre ever lied?
I don't know. What are you talking about?
I mean,
I know where you're going with this,
you're-
but that's not the point.
you're-
Donald Trump stands up at the podium every day and delivers lies.
Your speech is about the truth, and one thing about Biden that has always vexed Republicans is that he spends a lot of time talking about him being the center of truth and the restoration of the soul of the nation, and yet he and his people spend a heck of a lot of time undermining that very talking point, up to and including this year with the massive cover-up of his own
Scott,
condition.
how about
And so
Trump lying to the American people during COVID?
Well,
right?
about what?
How about that? I mean, drink bleach, right? I could go
Didn't
on
happen.
and on.
Debunked.
That it's not as bad as the flu. I mean, all of those
Debunked.
things. And the reality is 500.
You're doing it right now.
500,000 people lost their lives because the president wasn't honest with the country
I don't
about the
understand. Are you
dangers
saying
of
that-
COVID.
are you
My
saying the
point
virus was
no,
listening
my point
to
is
Donald
that
Trump?
lies have consequences. And that is.
I just want to make sure I understand that your
Sure.
position is that Donald Trump's words induced the virus to kill people.
No, what Donald Trump's words did was prevented people from protecting themselves
Come on.
and their neighbors, and 500,000 plus people lost their lives.
See-
That was my point. And more importantly, because of his lies, he didn't create an infrastructure from the governors all the way
gave
down
you
to
the
get
vaccine.
shots in
He
arms,
gave you the
to get
vaccine.
the economy open again.
Jay,
So lies have consequences, and
honestly,
that's what Biden was talking about today.
there-
We have to be aware of
So
that.
This is
And
crazy.
honest
I'm
about
sorry,
it.
this is insane.
So,
Yes, Scott Jennings completely bodies that Karen Pundit, right? Oh, Donald Trump, everything he says is a lie. Everything that comes out of his mouth is completely false. And all Scott Jennings has to say is, has Karine Jean-Pierre or Joe Biden ever lied? Remember, for months, they've been saying that Joe Biden was at the top of his game, right? And here we are knowing that's completely false because everybody in America saw it, except for apparently the Democrat Party. And then, of course, to prove her point, she brings up the idea that, oh, Donald Trump said to drink bleach. And everyone knows that has been so debunked. Even leftist Snopes says it is not true. Donald Trump never said that, but she never got the memo. And just like Joe Biden repeating these same lies during the presidential debate that ironically ended up exposing him for who he actually was, show just how ignorant they are, in fact, of the actual truth. And this whole discussion on misinformation is completely ridiculous because the last people who should be deciding what is true and false are first random fact checkers on these powerful political platforms, but also the government, right? We want to have free and open dialogue because when you're allowed to have that, we can actually point out that, yes, you are incorrect, just like I did here, using a leftist source to combat a leftist propaganda talking point. That's why we have to have free speech and not a bunch of random fact checking on these multimedia platforms. But now let's check out Stephen A. Smith being completely disappointed in Joe Biden's final address.
Of course, the president is entitled and he should give a farewell speech. There is no question about that. But different times invade us all. And when you see the times that we live in, sometimes you see something and you just say silence or a simple goodbye would suffice. And that's how I felt about the president tonight. You were supposed to step away. You were supposed to be a transitional president, and you didn't do that. And you decided that you wanted to stay in the race. And then you got exposed because you showed up on a debate stage June 27th, and you were not what people on the left had purported you to be. And then you ultimately was forced out by a party. And then you're walking out of office when clearly the mandate was more so against you than necessarily for Donald Trump. Essentially, you're trying to still have that level of influence, and that's faded. It's faded. We've moved beyond that as a nation. There's a lot of people out there that didn't want to hear what he had to say months ago when he was president. And unfortunately, maybe not me, maybe not you two, But unfortunately, there's not a lot of Americans that were interested in hearing what he had to say tonight.
So Stephen A. Smith actually sums up the leftist perspective very well. They don't want to hear from Joe Biden anymore because he's a loser. He lost in a big way, and they blame him for not stepping out of the role fast enough, even though they were all 100% behind him the entire time, until it became so apparent, so obvious that Joe Biden was going to lose, that now they're all of a sudden clamoring for a replacement. And of course, the only thing I'll say here that I don't agree with Stephen A. Smith mentioning is the fact that, yeah, Donald Trump, it wasn't a mandate for him to win so much as a mandate against Joe Biden. And I can see how you'd make that argument. However, Donald Trump did win the popular vote along with all of the swing states. So I would say definitely that is a mandate for Donald Trump, and a complete rejection of everything that Joe Biden and the Democrats stood for and also accomplished during Joe Biden's first term. So what a way to go out, not with a bang, but with a whimper that nobody cares about. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.